Welcome back to ZMS Esports Studio, your home for all things cycling and racing. And you are joined today by me, your host, Mark, as I navigate you through Stage 5 of the React E-Cycling Race Series. Speaking of, where are we racing today? So Stage 5 sees us take on Loch Lavan in Scotland. And as you can imagine, for the Scottish lowlands, immediately surrounded by the Highlands, there's going to be some fierce climbs involved and some good rests for our cyclists, our contenders, if you will, on those downhills and lots of nice flats around the banks of the lake. And it is a 34.1 kilometer race. And it's going to be some beautiful scenery, of course. But where do we stand currently with our league table from the prior race Stage 4? Well, we can see that Keith H is still clinging on to that top spot. And my God, he is a powerful climber. So that is well earned. He's there at 681 points. OTR also fills out the second place with Tony Lake, also from the UK. And OTR continues in third place with Gordon Jackson. We saw his pain face on that previous race from his live web camera. Fantastic pain face, Gordon. And B Hap, our one and only North American rider in these races, it takes up place 4, my apologies. And Peter Austin, also OTR, rounded up the top 5 with 455 points. So without any further ado, let's jump on over to that start line and see how our contenders are getting on. So just under a minute to go. And we're seeing a lot of those OTR shirts again, jerseys, and let's see what they can do. Will they be able to continue to round out that top 5? B-Hap there in his Team USA jersey, something that you can actually customize with your avatar if you join Wahoo RGT, featuring many of the country's Olympic cycling team jerseys. Here we go, 2, 1, and our contenders are off. And we can see there the color-coded bars. When it's in red, our riders for sure are well into anaerobic, well over their threshold. G Jackson putting up some fierce effort there, as is B Hap, letting it be known that he may be the only American here. However, that doesn't mean that he should be overlooked. So we've got our UK OTR contenders filling out the top 3 right now. Gordon Jackson in the green, which means he's staying around threshold. So he's doing something very good there, being able to get the most out of his draft benefit, being in with other OTR riders there. And we've got Anne Penn on the front, just over threshold, again, as indicated by that color-coded bar. But we have Mr. Whittle here beginning to surge ahead. And this is the interesting thing at the start of all of these races, when we see this peloton begin to form, you know that there's going to be some jostling for lead position. And it may be that with OTR riders in there, they're communicating in some function, whether that's through Wahoo RGT's baked in race radio through the Wahoo RGT control app, or whether they're using some other function such as Discord, and they may be communicating as to who is going to be pulling on the front, when they're getting tired, when they're going to drop behind, and who is going to take over. So we've got Peter Austin here, one of our top 5 at the moment, and he's holding some pretty good clip there, putting in some contention against Anne Penn. But Anpan is not going to give up without the fight, of course. We've got Gordon Jackson there, holding a very steady place in that peloton. And we have a Danish rider here, which I don't remember seeing last time, Østergaard. And we have Mr. Laval. And we have our Irish contender here, Jay Rogers. So Gordon Jackson just over threshold, probably about 15-20% over threshold here, holding very steady for OTR Team D. Fantastic effort there from Gordon. We're beginning to see an echelon form as well. So imagine an echelon being like when you see geese fly south for the winter, they form that V shape. In other words, a group that is spreading out across the road. And I'm wondering if that's jostling for lead places or team tactics. So the OTR team from the UK holding very steady here. A very good blob, if you will. A bunchy, as may be said in the UK and Australia. Mr. Jackson holding really good, just over threshold there. Stable effort. So we very much, again, have a lead or an attack peloton, if you will. But let's see what happens as we get into the climbs. Normally this can either dissipate or it can even strengthen that lead or attack peloton. And as you can see on our elevation profile at the bottom of the screen there, we've got some fierce climbs coming up. It's going to separate the wheat from the chaff. The strong from the potentially Canadian. I can't help but quote dodgeball whenever I get the opportunity. Now we're forming a bit of a pace line, going back into a traditional peloton. And everyone is looking very good today, very solid. Consistency in those pedal strokes, consistency in the cadence, consistency in the power output. These are very good athletes who have trained for that continuity, and it shows. The animation of your avatar, the animation of the cadence of your avatar in Wahoo RGT is, so long as you have a cadence meter, is based upon your real world cadence. So you really do see the consistency of the rider's cadence shown visually, even without seeing the real world riders. One thing I also love about Wahoo RGT is with the licenses they have with bicycle manufacturers and with some of the clothing companies such as Garneau from Canada, and me being a Canadian, big nod to that. I do like the fact that you can customize what your avatar rides with some of those bikes. For example, as a Canadian, I was very happy to see that there is an Argon 18 license bike in the game, and of course, I had to snap that up for my avatar. You saw Canyon there, I believe that was on Gordon Jackson. And again, talking about jerseys, you can see the Team GBR or Team GB. So the Olympic cycling team for the UK, represented on a couple of riders there. For example, on Jay Bird, who we are covering now. So Ann Penn surging ahead again. Again, very good consistency in that power, about 15-20% over threshold, as indicated by the amber on that color-coded bar. If you're looking for the color-coded bar I'm referring to, it's literally just beneath the name tag. So we're several kilometers in, racing towards 10 kilometers, so 26 kilometers remaining. Here we are, we've got OTR rider A Street pushing ahead. Putting in a little bit of a gap. So Andrew Street. But I think this gap can be eaten up pretty quickly. There we go, Andrew's dropping back to threshold there. And that might be a clever tactic, maybe getting the rest of that peloton to push ahead, get them to cook their cardio effort a little bit. And then if you remain at threshold like Andrew is doing there, maybe he can push ahead and begin to elasticize that effort, begin to break up that peloton. But only time will tell. And look at these fantastic camera views, these virtual cameras being controlled by our wonderful vision mixer Damon, live out of London in the UK. And there we have Damon. Fantastic work, sir. I love seeing that array. Very jealous as somebody who holds a degree in film and television production. So Jay Bird taking the front again. Holding around about threshold, knowing how to pace himself. Fantastic work. And our Dane, a Dane being the world champion in the female Tour de France from, I'm trying to remember what year that was. I believe that would be 2022. Østegard, which I believe I'm pronouncing correctly. I believe that's what the Omega makes that O sound like. And B-Hap here, our sole North American. I salute you, my fellow North American. And we can see those power numbers on screen now, the watts per kilo. So the overall wattage as divisible by the weight of the rider. So we're seeing them go into the red, which means they are above their peak watts per kilo. So fantastic effort here. Roger Whittle from OTR's UV team, really going all out there, just pushing about that 15-20% above threshold for that amber effort. And Mr. Lavelle, I've got to remember to pronounce that Lavelle because he's from the UK and not Laval because he is not French, but Sean Lavelle. And again, my Danish friends, please don't be afraid to correct me if I'm pronouncing Østegard incorrectly. I may be pronouncing that more Deutsch, as that's the language I know out of those Central European languages. But fantastic effort, going about 40% over threshold in little chunks here, and then hitting full anaerobic, as we can see there with that solid red bar. Beginning to break away, and this is what I was talking about with the climbs coming up. It can really elasticize the peloton. So we can see that our Danish friend here is a very powerful climber, as is Jay Bird, not letting go of his locked on vision of the rear wheel of Østegard. Peter Austin here, pushing ahead in that climb, beginning to gain some distance between him and his contenders to his rear here, but you have to remember that being spun out on that gravitational benefit of the downhill is coming. In game and somewhat in real life, as long as the descent is not too steep, you can go into your toughest or highest tension gear and maybe dampen the brakes a little bit to still be able to pedal. Can be a little bit dangerous, please be careful if you try it outside. And I would recommend only doing it outside if you're very confident at bike handling. But that can be certainly a tactic that riders can use to keep the pressure on, as we can see from Anne Penn here. Jay Bird has surged ahead. But the dashing Dane, the Dane that dashes on the bicycle, is not going to give up without a fight, closing the gap with that rear wheel ahead. And there is another powerful climb coming up. So our Danish friend here, I'm sure, is going to show what they have as a climber as we get into this next climb. Into a flat, into another slight and much more shallower, or much more shallow, I guess I should say, descent in mere meters here. So I'm sure we're going to see that peloton begin to rebunch on the next descent after this next powerful climb, as it is a much steeper descent. But what counts is when that evens back out into either a flat or a relative climb, and the pressure needs to be put back onto those crank arms. So what was our full and comparative lead or attack peloton is broken into a lead and a chase. We're now looking at the chase. Can they close that gap with the climb that's about to come up and its very steep descent that follows? Well, dear viewer, we shall find out. Oh, Jay Bird has opened up that lead. Now a mere pip on the horizon. But our Danish friend here is that 15 or 20% above threshold fairly consistently. So let's see what they can make happen. Gordon Jackson there taking charge, surging ahead at the lead of our now chase peloton. B-Hap, I think, struggling to hold on to that rear wheel ahead, but good effort as always, sir. So a little peak and a little trough, but we have that fierce climb looming ahead. Looming, I'm sure, like Scotland's tallest peak, Ben Nevis. So over 10Ks in now. So I believe we're in the shadows of the mountain range of the Cairngorms. I'm not overly familiar with my Scottish geography, a lot better at England, having originated there. But I believe that's where we are. And I'm not even going to attempt, dear viewer, those Gaelic Scots names. Peter Austin keeping up with Gordon Jackson there, really showing the power in those legs of those OTR contenders. So shoulder to shoulder, I think perhaps doing a team play here to begin to look at perhaps blocking out B-Hap. I think that's what I'm seeing, but again, the communication between those two team members may be different in the real world. Jay Bird, much like, I'm trying to remember the name of our French contender who won the last race, he's beginning to sail ahead unobstructed by other riders. Again, looking serene from this aerial view. Jay Rogers, our Irish contender, John Rogers, surging ahead. I'm sure that big powerful effort from those quads is powered by coal cannon. And I mentioned coal cannon because it is my most favourite of Irish comfort foods. So we're live with the OTR contenders from OTR Team D. So we've got Peter Austin and Gordon Jackson. Again, holding fairly consistently, just over and bouncing down to threshold. So this is the start of this fierce climb. It looks deceptively easy right now in the plus 4% range, but again, for road races, road riders are invariably in higher tension gears, so they're certainly going to be feeling it through the quads, the glutes, and maybe even the calves. But there is quite the climb ahead. Anders Ostergaard making these climbs look easy, doing it at threshold here. So at threshold, as a powerful climber, I suspect in the small chain ring, shifted down to the small chain ring, and a somewhat educated guess, with my somewhat educated eyes, I would believe about halfway up the cassette, because that cadence is not too fast. So that chase peloton doing pretty well right now, beginning to close that gap with Anders ahead. So it's still anybody's race right now. And after a fierce climb comes the steep descent. What goes up must come down. Simplified physics for you. Anders, I'm sure, getting some nice rest in that little trough in this climb. Jay Bird also powering ahead. Jonathan Bird. There we go. These the full name tags there really do help me out, and I thank you for bearing with me, viewer. Now, I'm also a powerful climber, and I can tell you that I love these troughs that come out in climbs. Certainly, you feel that moment where you go, that's nice. You feel the burn go from your quads, from your glutes. And it is absolutely wonderful. Here we go, look at Gordon there, that power as we see that meter go from amber to red. Also a powerful climber, but powerful on all terrains. And Penn beginning to really push out and dissipate the effort of this chase peloton, and we seem to have lost B Hap as well. There we go, look at that. And that was about a fast enough feat and a powerful enough push against chain tension that I believe Gordon may actually be an outsider in the real world as well. Peter beginning to push ahead as well. I believe working as a team to maybe burn out that cardio effort of Van Penn so that they can really push ahead with a lessened effort further down the line, but I don't know for sure. J-Bird is now in the descent, and you can see that from the change in his coloured meter there, and by the fact that his avatar is dropping into the animation that shows him leaning down into the hoods. I believe that's called cruising in North America. In California they call it trucking. and taking full advantage of the freewheel, as it's known in North America, or coasting in the rest of the world. So those darker blues is like the obverse of seeing those darker reds on climb. So this is a very steep descent. In fact, that blue is so dark it's purple. BW Hap there unfortunately lost the rear wheels of that chase peloton, but B-Hap is certainly very powerful on the flats. There is a chance with the distance left that he can bridge these gaps, but time will tell. Roger Whittle and Andrew Street here, I believe both OTR, and they're beginning to push ahead to catch up with the athletes ahead. So we're now on the lake banks of Loch Lavan, coming up to that very sharp turn that comes ahead. Almost a 90-degree turn. And that seems to come straight out of a descent, so that's quite a fierce turn at speed. Oh no, into a bit of a climb, so maybe not too bad. Just a tiny climb there. Anders there has actually dropped back enough that he's now in the chase peloton. But that's nothing to be sniffed at. We saw his fantastic effort to surge ahead before. I'm sure that Anders is hiding another one. He'll be like a children's musician. He's just going to pull it out of the hat and off he goes. Jaybird still flying, still cruising, making it look altogether too easy, which should be illegal. Because I'm sure all of us other cyclists look at it and go, damn, wish we could be that guy. So we're just over halfway. As indicated, of course, by that turn to come back on the obverse side of the lake bank. I've got John Rogers and Sean Lavelle. Sean there with OTR, as of course indicated by his OTR jersey. Again, the kits in-game are fully customizable. In fact, almost everything is customizable. So hold it steady around threshold here. At this point, just over halfway, I'm wondering if they're trying to chase the chase peloton or if they're looking to hold for placement within the top 10. Time will tell. So Ray Slade here, Jonathan Baird. I think that's another downhill here. And Anders has pushed ahead to the front of our main peloton now that is chasing Jonathan Baird. And just as I say that, jostling for lead position on the chase group. With Gordon Jackson there, just shooting a little bit above threshold. And I think the reason he's struggling to hold that effort is just because it's a little bit of a downhill, tiny bit of a downhill. So the chain tension isn't quite holding. Peter Austin beginning to surge to catch up with his teammate. And it looks like they may be doing a team tactic of pulling and draft and switching around. And Penn there, keeping the effort consistent. A very powerful rider as well. as is Anders, and I think we may be beginning to see one of those surges I began to allude to. Anders certainly a very impressive cyclist. Bhap here holding very steady around threshold. Again, I'm wondering if he is looking at placement right now rather than chasing. Because chasing, when a gap is formed, especially a sizable one, you can just burn your cardio effort to a point where you might as well give up. It's too hard to continue. So certainly, I have a lot of respect for knowing what your tactic is and knowing not to push yourself too far. Pushing yourself too far, you're going to lose, and you're going to perhaps be even down the league table. So it's almost like that analogy of the tortoise and the hare. Tortoise and the hare. I should learn how to pronounce things. So Peter Austin and Anne Penn there jostling for the main attack position. So we have Chase the Yellow coming on Wahoo RGT, live here on ZMS eSports Studio in July, with stage 1 in the Avranches to Montmichel, stage 2 in the Chateau Redon to Sistodo, and then stage 3 the Alpe d'Huez, stage 4 Sustons. I think I'm pronouncing that right. My apologies to French people. So join us here for that. I'll be your commentator live on those. So 12 kilometers left, or just beneath 12 kilometers. We're going into relative flats again, and this is where we're going to see our surges, if you will, really begin to burn that effort. Anders is a powerful climber, but is he also powerful on the flats? We'll find out. We still have some fierce climbs coming, but little tiny bumps of climbs. Will it be enough to elasticize that effort again? Stretch out our pelotons? Let's see. Here we go, Anders is going into the red again. This is where the power of a seasoned climber comes into play. Beginning to really catch those rear wheels. But this is where Peter Austin are seeing that, and they've seen how powerful of a climber Anders is, and they are not letting up on it. And this is where you have to be good with your eye in game, really seeing the effort of your fellow riders. And that shows how seasoned Gordon and Peter are. And so Jonathan Bird here in the red and really pushing. I think he's seeing those upside down triangles on the elevation profile beginning to close in on him a little bit, and he's looking to hold that very impressive distance that he has opened up, the very impressive breakaway that he's opened up. John Rogers here and Sean Laval. Holding fairly consistently, just a smidge above threshold. So we're closing in on the final 10Ks. And I'm loving seeing this main attack or chase group looking to get that attack in on Jonathan Bird, but he is still just sailing. But Gordon there is putting in some fierce effort. Well, as everybody in this group right here. Now Anders is beginning to push again, looking to close in on Gordon Jackson. And he seems to be doing it fairly well right now. And Penn, though, is looking to hook on to that draft benefit that is being given and offered by Anders. Gordon nearly had a breakaway there. Oh, good tactics there with drifting over to the other side of the road to maybe deny that draft benefit. Maybe falling behind. Or as I'm beginning to see now, he's looking to catch up with his teammate to work with tactics together to begin to ebb out the effort of the other two contenders, sharing the breadth of the road with them. And again, the consistency is impressive, even with the surges. These are all seasoned cyclists. Jonathan Bird is just sailing like a clipper in the ocean. And again, serenely unobstructed by other cyclists, almost taunting us. So we're getting through the relative flats, the relative straights of the bank, and we're beginning to get somewhat close to the horseshoe at the end of our lake lap around Loch Lavan. B-Hub there holding very steady in 6th place position, and again I think has realised where his place is and is deciding to hold for that. And again, good tactic, good knowledge of your own ability. And while we can certainly surge and bring up our fitness and effort in race, it's good to know when you might cook yourself, when you might cook your effort, and where you need to be conservative. And by doing so, B-Hub is going to hold on to a very respectable 6th place position with some fantastic work going into that effort there. So as we get into the horseshoe there, it looks on our elevation profile at the bottom of the screen as though we've got a fairly fierce climb coming up. This may elasticize the effort. Will it allow our chase group to get closer to Jonathan Bird? So Andrew Street and Roger Whittle here, and they seem to have become stretched out as well. Andrew beginning to surge ahead of Roger. John Rogers for Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, holding fairly steady with Sean. I'm still familiarizing myself with all the various OTR teams. I believe BNF means that they are actually on OTR teams, OTRB and OTRF. So Peter Austin taking charge here, taking the lead on what has now become a pace line for this peloton. We were seeing it spread out more like an echelon before, with jostling for the lead place. I'm wondering if all riders, regardless of team placement, are deciding to work together here, perhaps in hopes of gaining some ground on Jonathan Bird. Again, your bikes, thanks to all the licenses that Wahoo own or have, negotiated for Wahoo RGT. You can customize them, and you saw Peter Austin there on his Evo. And Penn surging ahead, just that smidge above threshold, but we're beginning to see Anders, Gordon and Peter beginning to dip into the red, into the anaerobic to surge ahead. So what seemed like a peaceful pace line, that's a tongue twister, seems to be challenged once again. And as though to contradict me, has once again settled into a pace line. So we are past that sharp 90-degree turn, and we are now getting into the final throngs of our straight, our relative flat around this lake bank, getting close to that horseshoe that you're just seeing complete there on our aerial map, or topographic map, I should say. So Gordon Jackson beginning to take the lead again. And it's really anybody's race out of this group here. I'm beginning to suspect it is Jonathan Bird's race, however. Look at that, almost showing off. Looks like he's out of the saddle from this view, in the drops, and just surging through those crank arms. Just flying. So just a shave over 6Ks to go. With these relatively gentle rolling hills, certainly nothing that is going to strain the legs as a climb. But it's certainly going to see some peaks in power, some peaks in the old RPM. So Anders there, beginning to put in the challenge for the front. But Ann Penn is determined to hold that. So some spreading out again. And we were maybe getting close enough to that finish line that we're going to see some surges. Maybe they're going to hold just beneath their sprint efforts. But I think we're just about getting close enough. And I think our contenders here are eyeing up that elevation profile at the base of their screens as we see it too. And are going to be looking to be ahead for this climb. If you can hold strong on the climb, you can maybe, as before, stretch out the effort with your fellow contenders. I do the team time trial or Love TTT series with the West London VR team, and I can certainly say that when you're on those climbs, as a powerful climber myself, they hurt on a team time trial, so I know what the riders are going to be going through. So it looks like Peter's in that second place position, pushing ahead. Anders seems to have trouble holding those big power efforts that we saw from him early in the race. Maybe he has overreached a little bit. And I certainly don't mean to offend by saying that, but it certainly looks like we're getting big peaks and then dropping back. Peaks and then dropping back. Peter Austin certainly seems a lot more seasoned in being able to put in peaks of power and hold somewhat close and then peak again. and holding close. Anders, much like myself, seems to be very powerful at climbing, but I know from my experience, sprinting is not my strong suit, for sure. Under 5 now, so we're in the final furlongs. And Jonathan Bird almost seems to be taking it easy. Again, almost a jovial taunt to the contenders that I'm sure, if he had a rearview mirror, would be mere ants on the horizon. Alright, hitting some anaerobic efforts now, getting into the base of our climb. And this is where Anders comes into his own and is beginning to open up a breakaway. Fantastic effort, Anders. Our fellow contenders in this chase group are beginning to do the same. But is this their strong suit? And if not, by doing so, are they going to cook their effort just so close to the finish line? Let's wait and see. Everyone has different strong suits in cycling, even in a single discipline such as road. And it's always interesting to watch that. So Anders, much like myself, powerful climber, but I can't sprint to save my life. But in this chase group, we can see people who are pretty good at climbing, but they excel for sure in surges and short bursts of power and being able to hold somewhat close to that. So I love seeing these dynamics come to play. And it looks like Anders has successfully, I'll try and get my words out here, begun to open a breakaway. And has, as we mentioned, elasticized this chase group a bit with Gordon here. I think maybe also in the small chain ring, which is good if you're trying to pace yourself and not overcook your cardio effort. Anders, much like myself, probably sub 2 or 3k distance of climbing. We can push maybe in the big chain ring, but a little bit further down on the cassette. But certainly a clever way to not cook yourself if you don't excel at climbing would be to get into that small chain ring. So that's certainly a good tactic. So Anders has successfully opened that breakaway. We do have a very strong downhill where everyone's going to be spun out. There's no sense pedaling. Well, certainly there wouldn't be in the real world. It would be quite dangerous. But let's see what that does when the downhill comes into play. Will that bring that group back together, or has Anders got this in the bag now for second place? Well, time will tell, because we only have 3 kilometers left. And Penn really trying to push on those crank arms to catch up to Anders, but I think his distance seems to be somewhat baked in now. But let's see. I love being proven wrong. After all, I am here for the thrill of the game, the thrill of the race, the thrill of the chase. Gordon Jackson and Peter successfully holding together through the downhill as it begins to plateau back out into a flat. If anyone's got the power to surge on these flats to catch Anders, it's going to be that duo, that tag team of Peter and Gordon. And beginning to solidify her place, chasing Anders there. But Anders seems to be holding fairly steady still. Anders with the 3R3 team. Holding fairly consistently, just beneath his anaerobic, peaking into anaerobic, looking at this point to solidify the breakaway that Anders has over Anne. So under 2.5 kilometers remaining. Gordon and Peter also beginning to shorten that breakaway that Anne has over them. Jonathan Bird still just sailing. I'm almost certain that this is his race at this point in time. And I'm sure that finish line is beginning to become more than just a hazy mirage on the horizon. Anders again just beneath the anaerobic effort. Looks to be a lower cadence, so in a very, very high tension gear, just so that he can hold that power to hold that speed. Jonathan Bird beginning to have a little bit of a sprint here. There we go, yeah, definitely in a sprint now. And I think maybe more than focusing on just winning is looking for a good time as well. There we go, full anaerobic. Good sprint effort. Half a K. Very impressive racer here. Holding a sprint for that long. For me personally, I'm a 300 meter guy. But for over a K, or just over a K, fantastic work. Look at that. Makes it look like easy street. And Jonathan locks in the race win. Fantastic effort. Anders here. Still flying, but it looks like Anne is almost a creeping shadow, edging towards his rear wheel. But here we go, it looks like he's got it in the bag for second place. There we go. Just 100 meters left, and Anders has got that second place position in the bag for Team 3R3. And Anne holding steady for the third place position. Fantastic effort from Anne to do. Gordon and Peter. Gordon there surging ahead right into the anaerobic to cross that finish line for fourth, and Peter in a very respectable fifth, rounding out the top five. OTR, always very impressive on race here. And BHAP again, knew how to play that tactic and did so very well. Fantastic work there from BHAP, who has held very consistently just that little smidge above threshold to nab that 6th place position. BHAP is customized to be riding a BMC road bike. With disc brakes, which personally are not my favorite. I am one of those weirdos that prefer rim brakes on a road bike. I like that braking distance for being clipped in. I do not like having to jump off clipless fast. What do I do in an emergency? I unclip and bail. That's the answer to the question of what do you do with that longer brake distance in an emergency. So BHAP has comfortably got it in the bag for 6th place. So as BHAP crosses the finish line here, we can jump over to see our top 10 and our leaderboard from this race. So let's just jump on over to here. And so stage 5, it looks like Jonathan Byrne had 1 minute and 3 over Anders. So Anders did an incredible job to begin to close that breakaway. Fantastic effort. And just shy of 12 seconds behind Anders is Anne Penn. Gordon another 15 seconds behind Anne Penn. Peter Austin a mere 1.5 seconds behind Gordon to round out the top 5. But what did this do to the leaderboard for our series so far on the React e-cycling race series? Well, that has put Gordon into the number 1 spot. Keith H was absent today, so his points have taken a little bit of a beating as a result. BHAP has jumped up to 2nd place. Very impressive work there, BHAP. Keith H still in 3rd place. And Tony Lake still remains in 4th, and Peter Austin still manages to round out the top 5 with 625 points. But a very impressive jump in points there from Gordon, with taking himself up to the 724. So fantastic work, but how will race 6 in our following week change this? Well, you have to join us live on Wednesday to see that. So thank you for joining us today. You can watch these races live on ZMS eSports Studio on Facebook, on YouTube, and the very many methods by which you can watch ESTV. My name has been Mark. You've been a fantastic audience, and have a wonderful day.